I wasn't even supposed to be at the garage sale. My friend Julie dragged me along because she needed dishes for her new apartment, and I had nothing better to do. The yard was cluttered with the usual stuff: chipped mugs, old VHS tapes, dusty lamps with no bulbs. And then I saw the suitcase. It was propped against a folding chair, half hidden under a plaid blanket. Dark green, hard shell, with faded travel stickers clinging to its sides. Something about it felt intentional. Like it was waiting. $10, the woman running the sale said, like she already knew I'd ask. I opened it. It was empty. A few scuff marks inside. Smelled like cedar and old train rides. I bought it. Didn't even haggle. Julie rolled her eyes. You need another suitcase like you need a hole in your sock. I shrugged. It spoke to me. I was joking, kind of. Back home, I set it in the corner and forgot about it. Until 2 days later, when I was packing for a weekend trip and something rattled inside. I opened it again. Still looked empty until I lifted the lining. Underneath, in a hidden compartment, was a small leather journal tied shut with red string. No name. No date. Just a single note on the first page. If you found this, it means I didn't make it. Part 2. The handwriting was shaky, like it had been written on a bumpy train or by someone whose hands didn't stop trembling. My first instinct was to assume it was part of some storytelling project, a leftover from a creative writing class or a themed escape room prop. But as I flipped through the journal, page after page of what looked like a personal travelogue filled the pages. Cities, names, dates, cryptic phrases underlined in red. One page said check locker 402, Union Station. Another just had a doodle of an eye and the words, they know when you stop moving. The journal was thick, with dozens of entries. The handwriting changed a bit, like the writer had aged or maybe changed moods often. What made my hands go cold, though, was a photo tucked in near the middle. It was a black and white picture of a man in front of what looked like an old motel. He was holding the suitcase. My suitcase. The background was blurry, but there was a visible sign, Cedar Pines Motor Court, vacancy. I Googled it. It still existed. 3 states over. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes just staring at that image, the journal in my lap. A part of me said I should forget it, put everything back, move on. But another part, the part that bought the suitcase in the first place, leaned in. I called in sick the next morning and booked a rental car. My excuse to Julie was vague, something about a family emergency. I brought the suitcase and the journal with me, seat belted in like it was my road trip buddy. The highway stretched ahead, long and flat and unfamiliar. I kept the radio low and the windows cracked. Somewhere between state lines, it started to feel less like I was following a trail and more like I was stepping into someone else's life. And whoever they were, they hadn't wanted to be found. At least, not until now. I reached Cedar Pines Motor Court just after 6 p.m. The sun hung low behind a line of scrubby trees, throwing long shadows across the gravel lot. The place looked like it hadn't changed since the photo was taken. Same sign, same office with faded yellow trim, same lineup of identical green doors. I parked near the office and stepped out, gripping the journal in my hand like it was a pass to some secret world. A bell jingled when I opened the door. Behind the counter sat a man in his 60s, wearing a flannel shirt and thick glasses. He looked up from a Sudoku book. Checking in. Maybe, I said. Do you have a record of anyone named Elliot checking in? Or maybe Harold Elliot? He squinted, then stood and walked into a back room. I heard the rustle of papers. When he returned, he set a dusty binder on the counter and flipped through the pages. Got a Harold Elliot checked in for one night about 8 years ago. Didn't leave a forwarding address. He looked at me. Friend of yours? Sort of, I said. Mind if I check out the room he stayed in? He gave me a long look. It's not rented tonight. Number 6. Don't break anything. I thanked him and headed outside. Room SIX's door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, it smelled like air freshener and memory. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the journal again, flipping to a page marked with a paperclip. It was written in a hurry. They watched me at Cedar Pines. Room 6 mirror is not a mirror. I turned to the wall opposite the bed. The mirror was cracked at the corner, like someone had punched it. I stepped close, pressed my fingers along the frame. The right edge wobbled slightly. I gave it a tug, and it came off in my hands, revealing a hollow space behind it. Inside, a single envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with red wax like the journal. My name was written across the front. Not Elliot's. Mine. My heart thudded so loud I could hear it echo against the cheap motel walls. I held the envelope with trembling fingers, staring at my name written in looping black ink across the front. There was no way this had been placed recently. The paper was yellowed, the wax dry and flaking at the edges. But how could someone have known I'd be the one to find it? I broke the seal. Inside was a single page. No greeting, no signature. Just a typed message. Don't trust the man in the green flannel. If you read this, it means he already saw you. Get out. Now. I froze. Green flannel. The man at the front desk. Without even packing the journal, I grabbed the suitcase, stuffed the envelope into my jacket, and slipped out the back of the unit. The sun had vanished completely, the lot lit only by the dim porch lights over each room. I skirted the edge of the property, heart hammering, watching the office through gaps in the bushes. He was still in there, flipping pages in that binder. I ducked behind the trash enclosure and made my way to the rental car. My hands shook as I turned the key. I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station 2 towns over. I sat in the car, trying to calm down, trying to make sense of any of it. I opened the journal again. There was another note, scribbled sideways in the margins of a back page. If they find you, show them the coin. What coin? I hadn't seen anything like that. I opened the suitcase again, ran my fingers under the lining, checked the journal for anything tucked in. Nothing. But something in the hollow mirror wall had made a metallic clink when I pulled it loose. Could I have missed it? I had to go back. At least to the motel. I waited until sunrise, then drove back and parked on the street. From a distance, I watched the office. The man in the green flannel was gone. A woman was behind the desk now, younger, on the phone, smiling. Like nothing had happened. I slipped into room 6 again. The mirror was still propped beside the bed. I reached into the hollow behind it and felt along the bottom. There it was, a thin coin, cool to the touch. A triangle and an eye engraved on one side. The other side just said, Redwood. The coin weighed almost nothing, but it felt impossibly important. I turned it over and over in my fingers, the simple engraving catching the dim light in room 6. A triangle with an eye in the center on one side, the word Redwood on the other. No date, no country stamp, nothing to suggest it was currency. I slipped it into my wallet, nestled next to my driver's license. The journal, now worn soft around the spine, sat open on the motel bed, pages fluttering from the fan I turned on to chase the lingering scent of mildew. Redwood. It could be a place, a person, a code word. But I couldn't shake the feeling it was the next breadcrumb. Back at the car, I searched for Redwood and found 5 towns with that name across the U.S. One of them, Redwood, California, was only 6 hours away, and something about it made the hairs on my arms rise. Before I could overthink it, I plugged the location into my GPS and hit the road. The drive was long and winding, through forests that grew denser the closer I got. Towering trees cast shadows that danced across the dashboard. Redwood turned out to be less a town and more a road with a diner, a gas pump, and a single post office. That was it. The kind of place people passed through but never stopped in. I pulled into the diner, which looked like it hadn't changed since the 60s, and sat at the counter. A woman in her 50s with silver braids and a name tag that read Marlene poured me a coffee before I even asked. Been expecting you, she said, not smiling. My heart stuttered. Excuse me. You have the coin? She asked. My hand went to my wallet instinctively. I nodded. Good, she said. That means you're ready. Booth in the back. He'll join you shortly. She turned and walked away. I stood slowly, walked to the booth she'd indicated, and sat down. The cushion let out a long sigh. I set the journal on the table and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then someone slid in across from me. I looked up and saw the man from the motel photo. Same jacket. Same eyes. Except he looked exactly like he had in the picture. Not older. Not changed. Like time had stopped for him. You found me, he said quietly. And now you need to decide if you want the truth or to go back. I stared at the man across from me, heart pounding like a drum in my throat. The diner around us felt too quiet, like the world had pressed pause to hear what came next. I need to understand, I said. What is all of this? Who are you? He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the formica table. My name is Elliot, the same one in the journal. And the suitcase. You wrote it. He shook his head. Some of it. Most of it was passed down. Through people like you. Like me. People who feel like they don't quite belong in their lives. Who chase strange instincts. Who pick up old suitcases and follow handwriting through cities they've never been to. I swallowed. So this is a test? More like an invitation. To see if you'd come this far. If you'd care enough to follow the clues. I thought about the journal, the mirror, the coin, the long hours on the road. Okay. I'm here. What now? Elliot pulled out a small envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. Inside this is a name and a location. Someone else. Someone waiting. Waiting for what? For you to decide if you'll keep going. Keep going with what? He smiled. The work. The network. The chain of stories and watchers. Call it what you want. We find people like us. We give them a nudge. And sometimes, it changes their lives. Sometimes it saves them. I stared at the envelope. And if I don't open it? Then you leave. You take the journal, the coin, the memory, and you forget the rest. And if I do? Then you'll know what to do. I sat there for a long time after he left. The coffee grew cold. The jukebox changed songs. The sun dipped below the horizon. And then I opened the envelope. The envelope was thick, sealed with the same wax symbol as the journal. I opened it carefully, fingers trembling, and pulled out a folded map and a photograph. The map was hand-drawn, like the ones in fantasy novels, with circles around certain intersections and the name Sarah R. scrawled at the top. The photograph showed a woman, early 30s maybe, standing in front of what looked like an old bookstore. Her eyes were serious, focused. On the back, a note in the same looping ink. She knows more than she admits. Ask about the key. I left the diner and drove east for 2 hours before stopping for the night at a roadside motel. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept circling the same questions. Who was Sarah? Why the secrecy? Why me? By morning, I was back on the road, map unfolded on the passenger seat, coffee in the cup holder, the journal open on my lap at stoplights. The small town came into view just after noon. Quiet, sun-washed, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and instantly spots someone new. The bookstore was real. Ramble Books. Ivy crawled up the brick exterior. I stepped inside and was greeted by a bell and the smell of old paper. Behind the counter was the woman from the photo. She looked up and froze. You made it, she said. Not surprised. Just resigned. You knew I was coming? I asked. Not exactly. But I had a feeling. Let me guess. You brought the coin. I nodded. She gestured to a side door. We can't talk here. Come on. The back room was tiny, stacked with boxes. She pulled out a metal tin and retrieved a brass key with a tag that said 3W. This opens a storage unit downtown, she said. He left it for you. Or maybe for whoever came next. Doesn't matter now. You're it. I held the key, heavy in my palm. What's in the unit? She looked me dead in the eye. The part of the story that gets people hurt. Be careful. I didn't go straight to the storage unit. I waited a full day. I walked around the town, pretending to be a tourist, drank 3 cups of bad coffee from 2 different diners, and read the same paragraph of the journal over and over. I needed to be sure I was ready. But the truth was, I knew I never would be. So I went anyway. Unit 3W was tucked in the far corner of the facility, out of view from the office. The padlock clicked open like it was relieved to be useful again. I rolled the door up and stepped inside. It was clean, but dim. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling. I tugged the chain. Light flickered to life. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, all labeled in the same looping script. Clips, routes, records, and one simply labeled Before. I opened that one first. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. People I didn't recognize, places I'd never been. But in the corner of one, I saw myself. Blurry. In the background. I don't remember the moment, but I was there, leaning against a railing near a fountain, looking down at my phone. I was being watched. Had been, for years maybe. I pulled more boxes open. There were tapes, labeled dates, spiral notebooks full of writing that didn't belong to me but somehow mirrored my thoughts. I sank to the floor, overwhelmed. This wasn't just about Elliot or Sarah or the suitcase. This was about me. I was part of something before I ever knew it existed. My phone buzzed. No caller ID. I answered without thinking. Did you find it? A voice asked. Female. Calm. Yes, I said. Good, she replied. Now you're going to burn it. All of it. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at the phone like it had grown teeth. Excuse me. I finally managed. You heard me, the woman repeated. Burn it. That's the only way this ends safely. My first instinct was to hang up, but I didn't. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, someone else will. And they won't be as polite about it. The line went dead. I stood in the middle of the unit, phone still in hand, surrounded by cardboard memories and threads I hadn't finished tying together. Burn it. Like I hadn't just driven across 3 states to find it all. Like it was just that simple. I locked the unit and drove back to the bookstore. Sarah was behind the counter, filing receipts. She looked up, and I must have looked awful. You opened it. Yeah. And someone told me to burn it. Her face paled. Already. What's going on? I asked. She glanced around and gestured me into the back again. There are people who want it destroyed. Not just hidden, erased. Because what's in there? It proves something they can't afford to be proven. What? That people like us aren't accidents. That the patterns aren't coincidences. What are we? I asked. She took a deep breath. Witnesses. Thread pullers. The ones who notice. They don't like us. We mess up the algorithm. So what happens now? She reached under the desk and handed me a burner phone. You'll wait. Someone will call. And you'll have to decide if you trust them. And if I don't? Then you better start running. The burner phone didn't ring for 3 days. I kept it in my jacket pocket like a talisman, checking it obsessively even though I knew it would only ring once, and when it did, I'd have to be ready. I didn't leave town. I slept on and off at the roadside motel, drove loops around the neighborhood, kept watch outside the storage unit every night, half expecting someone to torch it. But no one came. On the 3rd night, the phone lit up. No caller ID. I answered. You kept it, said a voice. Male. Calm, almost too calm. Yes. Then you're the one we've been waiting for. Who are you? We don't use names. But you can call me the cartographer. Like a map maker? Exactly. You've seen pieces. You know about the Watchers. You've started to see the edges of the pattern. What do you want from me? To finish what you've started. There's another site. An archive. It's offline now, buried. But it holds the master record, everything that's ever been found. And you want me to find it? Not find it. Protect it. You're the last one who hasn't been compromised. I stared at the wall. My heart thundered. Where is it? A pause. Then he gave me coordinates. A remote town in the desert. When you get there, go to the library. Ask for the reading room. You'll know what to do. Before I could ask more, the line went dead. I sat for a long time, just breathing, trying to decide if I was brave or just stupid. Then I packed the journal, the coin, the map, and the burner phone into my backpack. I started the car, and I drove. The drive to the coordinates took 2 days. I passed ghost towns and stretches of desert that felt like the edge of the world. I stopped only for gas and bad coffee, my mind looping the same questions over and over. What if I was wrong? What if there was no archive? But something inside me refused to turn around. I reached the town, if you could call it that, just after sunset. A dozen buildings, tops. Dusty. Faded. Forgotten. The library sat at the end of the main street, its sign chipped and barely readable, Redland Public. I parked and stood outside the door, hand hovering near the handle. I stepped inside. The place smelled like sun-bleached paper and old wood. A single lamp glowed at the front desk, where a woman with short gray hair and a patched cardigan looked up. You're here for the reading room, she said before I spoke. I nodded. She handed me a key with a red tag marked B1 and pointed to a door behind a shelf of outdated encyclopedias. Down the stairs. One at a time. The room downstairs wasn't a room, it was a vault. Rows of file cabinets, old monitors, towers of hard drives. In the center, a table with one chair, and on the table, a black box about the size of a lunch pail with a blinking green light. Next to it was a notebook. I opened it. A single sentence on the first page, insert the coin. I pulled it from my wallet and slid it into a slot on the front of the box. The light turned blue. A screen on the wall lit up with a welcome message. User recognized. Continue. I tapped. Yes. What followed was a torrent of files. Thousands. Photos. Messages. Audio logs. Video clips. Every piece of evidence the Watchers had gathered over decades. Names. Patterns. Locations. And it was all real. This wasn't fiction. It wasn't a game. These people had built a map of human behavior so detailed it predicted major world events. And some of them had used it to manipulate those outcomes. My head spun. I stayed down there for hours. Maybe all night. I wasn't sure. But when I surfaced, the librarian handed me a second envelope. From the cartographer, she said. Inside was a new map. Hand-drawn. No instructions. Just a spiral that started where I stood and led somewhere else. A challenge. Or maybe an invitation. I looked at her. What happens if I follow this? She just smiled. I didn't leave right away. I sat on the curb outside the Redland Public Library, the map spread across my knees, the desert breeze tugging at its edges. The spiral pattern wound outward, leading away from the town and into the wilderness beyond. I realized then that there was no end to this, no neat finish line, no gold medal for finding the hidden truth. The story would continue as long as I chose to walk it. I folded the map and tucked it into my jacket. Then I turned back toward the town's only gas station to stock up for whatever came next. Inside, the woman at the counter barely glanced at me as she rang up my supplies: water, jerky, a flashlight, batteries. As I handed over cash, she slid something across the counter, a matchbook. "You might need this," she said. The front was blank. Inside, scribbled in tiny letters, was a phrase: "When you see the second suitcase, you'll know." A second suitcase. My heart thudded. So it wasn't over. It was bigger than I thought. I packed my supplies and followed the map, driving along a dirt path that gradually narrowed until it wasn't a road anymore, just packed earth and wild grass. I parked when I couldn't drive further and walked. Hours passed. Dust coated my boots. My legs ached. The sun dipped low, stretching the shadows tall across the landscape. And then I saw it, sitting in the middle of a dry creek bed, a suitcase. Same shape, same green color. Different stickers this time, but otherwise a twin to the one I found at the garage sale. I approached slowly. It didn't look like it had been there long. I crouched, hard hammering, and brushed dust from the handle. There was no lock. I lifted the lid. Inside was a mirror. Just a mirror. But in the reflection, I didn't see the empty desert behind me. I saw a door. A red door, freestanding, not attached to any wall. Just hovering in a blank white space. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. The image stayed. I touched the mirror, and the world tilted. A hum rose in my ears, low and vibrating, like a tuning fork inside my skull. When I looked up, I wasn't in the desert anymore. I stood before the red door. It had a brass knob, slightly tarnished, and a single word etched above it: "Continue." I laughed, shaky and overwhelmed, because of course it would end like this. Or maybe it wouldn't end at all. I reached out and turned the knob.